This is the Tree of Life, Season 24, Chapter 8. In this episode, we will be talking about altruism and consensus. Implicit in the tautological flow of consciousness from vessel to vessel is a kind of altruism, although it is not objective-oriented. That is, when the trendsetter, he who has already integrated an impulse, enters the vessel of the outgoing consciousness to complete the acquiescence in reverse substitution, he is performing what is essentially an altruistic act. Likewise, in parental investment, which is a reversal of hierarchical priority, there is also a degree of altruism, consistent with tautological priority, but for a goal-oriented action. When that impulse is further negated by the outgoing consciousness at the conclusion of the reverse substitution event, the result is a sequential substitution event, the decoherence period, where acquiescence is compelled. How this manifests depends upon whether the reverse substitution event was hierarchical or tautological. It tends to be the case that tautological priority resolves through reconciliation, whereas hierarchical priority resolves through force or authority. An example of hierarchical priority reasserting itself is given by the state, which maintains a hierarchical structure. Failure to integrate an impulse according to tautological natural law may result in a subsequent interaction with the state. Now, in the weak phase linking, we see hierarchical priority reasserted through flipping of the phase of some bodily rhythm or cycle, affirmational or negational. This means, for example, that the substitution event ends with expression or interference with the urination cycle, digestive cycle, sleep cycle, or sexual cycle. But it is also true that the level of priority under hierarchy is linked to the context length. This means that the higher in priority will have a larger distance between the substitutionary impulses in the transitionary structure, in a sequential substitution event, or substitution event. This has a couple of effects. First, it means that those higher in the hierarchy resolve conflicts between people or groups to create consensus. It also means that they are more likely to experience infinite recursion due to the two-step rule and therefore shape consensus. However, it is also true to say that by reasserting priority, they tend to resolve these conflicts about priority the same way every time. To shape consensus in a new way requires infinite recursion, which is only possible if the context length is stretched beyond that provided for by hierarchical priority. Thus, in the reassertion of priority under hierarchy, we see the same consensus re-establishing itself. From this we can see, preference shifting is a microcosmic process whereby sequential substitution leads to consensus. But the same process occurs when dealing with groups or individuals in conflict about what is true. In that case, the analog substitutionary structure forms describing the individual higher in the hierarchy. Thus, the sequential substitution event describes the conflict in the mind of the decision maker. This decision maker, say a judge, makes a decision which is enforced for the conflictual parties or persons by the hierarchy, re-establishing consensus. From this we can see that hierarchies form in separate public and private spaces, which impose consensus by priority in context length. The rigidity of the hierarchy, that is, the lack of altruism such as parental investment, determines the extent to which that consensus can change. That's the end of the podcast for today.